it's Jenny from Balloon Circus, and today's special shout out is for Happy and Romeo in Taiwan. Hi guys, I hope you're well. And this one is all about the pretty shepherdess. Long ago, a shepherdess named Ella lived on a mountain. She tended her flock of sheep and she was very happy. When the sun shone, she played Follow the Leader with her lambs, strummed her guitar for the quiet old sheep. When it rained, she sat in her small house and sang songs while she spun and wove her wool. On a summer day, a proud young prince came riding past in his fine silk clothes. He saw pretty Ella playing with her lambs, and he fell in love with her at once. He spoke to his servant. "Go and tell her to come here at once," he ordered. The servant went to Ella and told her what the prince had said. Ella laughed. "Tell the prince to come here," she said, "for I must stay here and tend my sheep." When he heard her reply, the prince was so angry he rode away without a word. He returned the next day. Again he sent his servant to tell Ella to come, and again she laughed and refused. By then the prince was so angry. He jumped from his horse. He marched to the river where Ella watched the sheep drinking. "Who do you think you are, refusing to speak to me?" he shouted. "I didn't refuse to speak to you," she said. "Are you so lazy you can't walk a few feet to speak to me?" The prince was most upset. Ella was the first person who had ever spoken back to him in his whole life. "But I love you," he cried. "I want to marry you. Come with me and live in my palace. You shall have servants to wait on you hand and foot. You shall never do a bit of work." But Ella only laughed. "What, and be a great ninny like you?" Well, no one had ever called the prince a ninny. He was annoyed. He stomped up and down the riverbank, glaring at Ella. He stomped so hard he knocked the edge of the bank into the river and fell in it himself. "Help!" he cried. "I can't swim!" Ella held out her long crook. He caught the end of the stick, and then she pulled him to shore. He crawled from the water with his finery, all soaked and muddy. Ella couldn't help laughing at the sight. He blushed, thinking what a ninny he really was after all. Fancy falling in a river and being rescued by a girl. He muttered his thanks to Ella, walked away dripping, and didn't come back after that. Ella was a bit sorry. It was rather nice to have a prince around, even if he was a ninny. Many months later, the summer was over. It was time for Ella to leave the mountain before the cold winter snows fell. She started down the mountain driving her sheep, but a storm blew up very fast, and soon Ella and all her sheep were lost and half buried in the drifting snow. Poor Ella was afraid they would all perish on the spot, when a young shepherd came through the snow. He rounded up the sheep, led them down the mountain, and brought Ella to a little house with a big stable beside it for the sheep. He sat Ella before a warm fire to dry out. "I shan't laugh," he said, "even though you are wet and not very pretty with mud all over your face." Ella knew that voice. She looked hard at the shepherd for the first time. He was really the prince, and it was his turn to come to the rescue. "What happened to your fine horse and beautiful clothes? Why don't you live in your fine castle now?" "Oh, I can have them whenever I wish," said the prince. "But all summer long I've been learning to be a shepherd, because I want to marry you, pretty shepherdess." Ella laughed. "You're not a ninny anymore," she said. "Now I'll marry you." So Ella and the prince were married. They lived in his great palace, but when they grew tired of fine clothes and lazy living, they went back to the mountain and the sheep for a while, and wherever they were happy. Hope you enjoyed that one, and we'll see you next time.